Hi team, welcome to 10 Talks. Today's conversation is with Preslie, and she was a volleyball player and now she's actually become a volleyball coach. So what a gift for us to get some words of wisdom from an athlete to athlete, as well as just being a new coach. And so Preslie, thank you for being here. Welcome to being on 10 Talks with Kathy. And so we want to know the power of your story. Just take us on a bit of your journey.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. My volleyball journey started when I was in fourth grade. I'm the middle of five. I have an older sister, older brother, younger sister. So I have a pretty big family, and we grew up around sports. It was always something for us to do, something us to compete with one another. So that's really where my love for competition started, honestly, just like at home with my siblings. When I saw my older sister, who was my role model and still is, pick up a volleyball and how much fun she was having, I was like, all right, let me try that out. Because at that time, I was playing basketball, I was playing a little bit of tennis. But when I started playing volleyball, there was just something different about the sport that I loved. First of all, when I was playing basketball, I was put in a co-ed league and I was the only girl on the team. So I think one of the most important and favorable things about volleyball is that I was surrounded by a bunch of people who were like me, other little 12, 13-year-old girls. And so that was really nice. And once I started, I honestly just didn't look back from there. I played high school nearby, all 4 years on varsity. I started club with Aspire Volleyball in Tempe, and I played with them from 12s to 18s. So super loyal and consistent throughout my time. It was really nice, the connections and friendships I've made. And then I was fortunate enough to go and play volleyball at Berkeley, Cal Berkeley. That's where I received my undergrad. And I completed that in 3.5 years. And then because of COVID, it took away my senior year. And even though at the time I thought it was, really sad and unfortunate, it actually opened up another opportunity for me. So I actually grad transferred and I attended Baylor this past year. And I just am finishing up my master's right now. And so I got to play 3.5 years in the Pac-12, and then my final year, my COVID year in the Big 12. So I got a lot of experience being able to play in different places, which was really exciting. And then as part of my program for my master's, my internship is my volunteer coaching opportunity, which I'm now doing back home at Arizona State. So it's kind of a full circle moment, honestly, to find myself coaching back in the Pac-12, honestly. But yeah, that's my long but really fun volleyball journey, honestly, from start to finish.
Interesting. And so what's different? Tell us how coaching is different from playing.
I want to say that it is so different because it really is. Like, I feel like as a player, you feel like you have so much control in the outcome of your game, right? And as a coach, you're trying to train your players as best as you can to make them feel like they have control, to give them the best technique and the best scouting advice, right? And I feel like as a coach, it's kind of like we're trying to prep you every day of the week so that on those game days you feel like you're ready to go in it. And that's something like super interesting, like in terms of differences. But I will say, because of my leadership style and the way that I was as a player, it really did translate well to coaching, because I found myself coaching a lot of the time, not coaching, but kind of coaching, giving advice and assistance. I always wanted to do more with my teammates, give them any tips I thought could help them without, crossing that boundary of feeling like I'm bossy, but just really using my natural born leadership style as a part of my playing time. So I've really noticed that has helped. And I'm very outspoken and very outgoing as a player. That's how I was. And so even as a coach, I find myself like, I always have one more thing to say, one more thing to add. And of course you got to find ways. There's times to not talk, which is something that I'm learning as well. Sometimes you just have to let the player figure it out by themselves. But yeah, I've found that the way that I grew up training and just my personality has like translated almost seamlessly into my coaching style as well.
With things that you can do easily because you've done them so many times, and you're trying to train someone else and they can't do it, what kind of emotion does that elicit?
Yeah, that's something I definitely, what I forgot to mention as part of my volleyball story is that I've coached club over the years since I was a junior in high school. And so simultaneously right now, while I'm coaching at ASU, I'm also coaching 15-year-olds. And so I'm firsthand, I think that's where I really see it more of like where there's, if I say something, it's not like there's going to be an immediate translation on the volleyball court, right? Whereas college girls are it's a little bit easier to see them. They've had a lot more years of experience, obviously. So if I ask them to do something, usually the translation happens pretty quickly. And so while it would be easy for me to get frustrated to not see an immediate result and think, okay, well, I knew how to do that. All I have to do is think about the way I was taught and how I can better communicate that to the players. Because just because I was taught a certain way and this is how it was demonstrated to me and I understood it, that doesn't mean that it's going to work like that for the player that I'm trying to coach or teach that skill to. And so for me, it's really just a practice of patience. And I think it's really expanded the way in which I communicate. And again, like during the day, I'm at ASU talking to college girls, talking high level volleyball. And then at nighttime, I go to club practices talking to freshmen in high school. So it really is this kind of code switching almost dependent on my audience in terms of like whether I'm talking to college girls and younger girls, but it remains the same that it takes a lot of patience and knowing that every single player receives information differently. So sometimes you just have to change the wording of how you say something in order for them to really understand what you mean.
And does it take more patience to be a coach than it does a player when you were communicating with your teammates on the court and they weren't getting it?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, it's so interesting because I would say it definitely takes more patience as a coach, because I'm handling all 20, however many girls are on the team, right? I say handling, I'm coaching, communicating skills and techniques. And then when I was a player, when I would say something, I would only say something if I knew how to communicate it to them. As a coach, I have to say something to them regardless if I'm confident that I'm communicating it correctly. And so I think my relationship from player to player, I would know, okay, I'm really close with this girl when I was a player. And so I can say something a little bit more casually about a technique. Whereas I'm going to have to, and now as a coach, it needs to be super formal because now I'm training you how to win. So you can do this without me bringing it up. Whereas a player, I was kind of just bringing it up in hopes that you would kind of receive my information well. And we're friends and we're teammates and you understand that I just want the best for us.
I'd like to hear an example of that.
So I was a middle, and so I had to handle a lot of the blocking. And so I would say majority of my feedback that I was giving to my other teammates as a player had to do with blocking. And so when I'm on the court and I'm with a pin an outside hitter who I can tell is frustrated with themselves, they're not understanding, I can see the coach communicating to them and they're still like not really grasping or able to apply the concept. Me as just a leader and just kind of understanding the volleyball game at the level that I do, I would take them aside at a water break and I'd be like, hey, I think honestly what might help you is, and then I would say, instead of stepping with your left foot, try pushing off with your right foot. Try really thinking, because I would see how the communication might sometimes, just like how I was saying before, not this, the way that you communicate things isn't always going to work and click for every player. And so I kind of found myself being the translator when I was a player of, I understand what the coach is saying and I understand how to apply this. And I can also see how my teammate is not understanding how to apply it. Let me see if I say it like this, if then it'll be easier for them to apply.
So Preslie, words of wisdom, if you watch your film and think about what you wish you would have known now that you've had about, 15 minutes inside college coaching,
Yeah.
what do you wish that you would have known as an athlete that you feel like could have really helped you?
I think one thing for me, and this is, probably universal, but my brain is, I'm very observational and analytical, and I like to look at a lot of things, but I also like to know the reason why. And I feel like I didn't ask why enough as a player. I wanted to be so coachable, and I wanted to just apply whatever my current coach was telling me. I wanted to just immediately apply it. And even when I found it confusing, I kind of was like, okay, well, this is their system. I got to just go with it. And I feel like looking back at it now, a lot of my, I would say, weaknesses in my physical game and even maybe my mental game came from my lack of knowing the why a coach wanted me to do something a certain way. So I was just kind of like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, instead of like, hold on, I will do it that way, but can you just explain why, so I can, because it'll help me just apply it faster if I know the reasoning behind it. And I found that, every coach has a different system. And if you're just talking and talking and talking and you don't really explain to your athletes why you want them to do something a certain way, it'll be harder for them to break their former habits. That's just what I found both as a player and as a coach. So I really wish I would have asked why. And when I did do that in my later year, towards the end of my volleyball career, I found like a lot more success in what I was doing, for sure, or in how the coaches wanted me to do something.
And do you feel like you know the why of everything, that is happening on the court? So with the training that you're doing, have you had a player, I'll say, stump you? It's not a game, they're not trying to stump you, but have you had them ask you why enough to where it's like, just do it?
Yeah, it's funny sometimes. So I've been that player. There was a point where I was like, but why? And the coach was just like, I don't know, I can't really tell you why. For them, they're like, I just know that this worked for me. I know that when I did my move, my blocking move like this, it worked for me, and I saw better blocks. I was able to read better. And so they were just kind of saying that their why was basically their experiences. And sometimes you just have to accept that that is enough, that they did it themselves in application, and they might not be able to tell you, every single part of why this works, but it worked for them and they've seen it work for players that they've coached. And so if you just commit to what they're saying, then you won't even need to ask why, you'll just see it in your performance.
When you're communicating now as a coach, do you say, do this and here's why? Have you now added that as your communication?
Yes, that's been something I'm super intentional about, is making sure that, especially me being a volunteer, I just joined ASU at the beginning of the semester. So they don't know me like from a coaching standpoint. I have done very little for them to trust me. And so I feel like a big piece of them gaining my trust is by explaining why beforehand, so they don't have to be confused about why I'm saying something that I am saying. And everything that I'm saying is not contradictory to the system that they're used to. It's more just supplemental, like, oh, I think that if you look at this, if you're looking at the setter across the net, or just like little bits and pieces. And then I'll say like, because I'll always, most of my whys come from when I was a player and like I would get, I would always go back to the experiences of also adding it worked for me, because then that kind of like gains a little bit more trust of like, the only reason I'm telling you this is because it worked for me. Like I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't know that it worked.
So do you feel as if your credibility with them from a coaching standpoint is coming from your experience as a player?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting because there are, I think, 2 girls on the team that I played against while I was at Cal, because I obviously played in the Pac-12. And so they got to experience playing against me firsthand. And, I think that the things that I did as a player definitely help my resume and show, okay, she knew at least a little bit about what she was doing in the middle. It's not claiming to be the knowledge above everyone else, because I'm still learning. I'm only 23, but just enough where I can give these bits and pieces of like, I know even the systems that those people, the other schools in the Pac-12 play. And I can say, hey, when I played against Stanford or when I played against USC and they have this really fast offense, like the best way for me to, so it's kind of like that also gives me some credibility, is like, not only am I saying, yes, I was a pretty decent middle in the Pac-12 and I played and I was all Pac-12, but also I got to play at Baylor and we were just ranked number 5. In my preseason, I was playing Minnesota, Wisconsin, like I was playing against those top tier teams. So I also, not only just in the Pac-12, but the Big 12 and beyond, it's like I've gotten the full scope of playing against people and enough experience where I think they do trust me. And I have seen that they've shown me that they've trusted me, because in practice, I get the eye contact, I get the asking question, they ask me questions, which makes me feel like I have done my job improving myself. Obviously, I still have a lot of work to do, like I said, but it has been great for me to see them just commit to me as a coach, because I was scared that me being so young was going to be like a barrier between me and the girls. They might see me more as a friend, or like she doesn't really know enough. But really I haven't felt any of that, and that's made my experience as a coach like even all the better.
Do you think that was critical for you as a female coach to have been an elite player? Would you have been able to establish that credibility if you had not been an elite player? Or is this more important for you as a woman? And if you were a volunteer and you were a guy and you'd played on the Arizona State club team, which is a really good club team, their men's team, that you wouldn't have had to establish that credibility? Or don't you think about it that way?
Yeah, I have thought about this, just in terms of some of the female coaches, even in the NCAA world right now. I even think about Sonia. I'm like, she was literally as good as it gets in terms of female players, and kind of has that. I think about, like, for me, I know nothing about, before I got to ASU, I knew nothing personally about her coaching style or any of this, but I know what she did as a player, and that allowed me to want to be coached underneath her, because I'm like, I know at least she knows how to do it in application. Now, I do know that there is not a direct correlation between being a good player and being a good coach. I think it's very difficult, and you have to have a certain personality trait to be able to communicate and explain and have patience, and the IQ. Like, sometimes good players are just athletic, and that they just out athleticize everyone across the net from them, and that's okay too. But I do think that the better your resume is, the easier it is for people to not question you, because in a male dominated, honestly, it's unfortunate, but even in the Pac-12, like, I think we only have 3 female head coaches, which is like I would say, so unfortunate, obviously, but that's why I'm so excited about where my coaching career can go. And I want to encourage other females and other players when they're done, maybe playing pro overseas, because I know that's something obviously a lot of some of the top tier players do, is they want to go, well, I don't want to coach right after, I want to go play. Like, why would I stop playing? And so just trying to cultivate an environment where females want to be head coaches, because it is an inviting space and it is a space for them, and we need more of them. And I do think that having an elite background or resume does help you in terms of coaching, and getting people to trust you, for sure.
Preslie, have you always had female or male coaches? Tell us a bit about just, who has coached you and what's the difference? What have you learned from them? And what are you noticing as a female coach and athlete?
Yeah, so I, growing up in high school and club, I always had a female coach. She's actually the one that I'm coaching with right now. I'm coaching the club team that I'm coaching with is actually my little sister's club team, for the same club that I coached at. So it's really full circle and so awesome to be coaching with her. And she is the reason that I got into coaching, for sure. She was my first volleyball, I would say, like, what it means to be a powerful volleyball coach. It was her all the way. It was not a male. And so for me, I'm very lucky in that I did have a powerful woman in my life that taught me how to be competitive and how to have grit and all these things that made me into the player that I am today, and now the coach that I am today, because I do take after a lot of like what she taught me.
Was she an elite player?
She did play college, but I mean, I don't know that elite is the word. Like, her name, it's not like you say her name in the volleyball realm and you remember her volleyball playing career, but she has done great, amazing things coaching, that she's established herself that way. And so I think she's a good example of how the reverse of how you don't need to be the best player on your team to be a great coach. It just takes understanding the game and having the love for the game. Again, alongside the patience. I keep bringing up patience because I feel like that's the number one trait a coach has to have. But she was the best example in terms of a powerful female figure for me in volleyball. And as I got to college and I experienced having male head coaches, but also the mix of female assistant coaches. And I also had, there was a brief stint of time where I had a female head coach at Cal, Jen Dorr. I really noticed, I think one thing that I noticed in my female coaches versus my male coaches is I want to say, I don't know if the word is nurturing, but I guess it is, because all three of my strong women role models in terms of coaches in college were Jen Dorr. She was my assistant coach, and then she was our interim head coach at Cal. She's a mom. Sam Erger, she was my assistant coach at Baylor. She's a mom. And now Sonia at ASU, and she's a mom. And I think one thing that has been so inspiring for me, and I've really seen, I guess, the difference, is that I've seen these women be both loving and nurturing and competitive and fearless at the same time. And I think that comes from them being a mom, being a female, trying to honestly trying to be I don't want to say trying to be the mom of us, but still being a mom to us in the same way that they were a coach. And that was like something I'll always, I see Sonia do. It's just that protective instinct of like, these are my girls, these are my players. And so that the same way that they think about their kids is kind of the same way coach to player, I see them think about us. So I've been surrounded by phenomenal women, coaching women in my life, and men as well, not to take away anything from the male coaches. I've had great male coaches, But there is something and inspiring and empowering about having a mom on my staff and seeing on the coaching staff and seeing them just go above and beyond for us as players, knowing they're doing that same exact thing for their kids at home.
Love it. Yeah. So what would you say the difference is? And what I'm hearing is relationships, right? Like you are definitely feel like your female coaches were in relationship with you somewhat the same way they would be in relationship with their child, right? Really just that great connection. Did you feel the same relationship with your male coaches, or what was the difference?
I think that, yes, I think relationships is that's exactly how I'd put it. I think it's just easier being a female on a team of a bunch of females at this time and age where we're going through a lot mentally, and the moves to college, like there's a lot of other things going on outside of our lives that I find that it's easier to talk and open up with and be vulnerable with the female head or assistant coaches in our life, because that they get it. And I'm not sure, you as a player, you see that there is a disconnect, that the male coaches may not always understand what you're going through as a female in their 20s, or even a little younger than that. And so I think that comfortability allows you to extend your relationship in the volleyball world, in terms of, I know that I'm creating a great relationship with this female head coach. And so it's going to be easier to have tough volleyball conversations because we've already established that foundation on like a deeper below surface level. With my male coaches, I would say that it just took more time. I think that I still have great relationships and communication with my male coaches, but it's in a different way. We're not talking about the same things off the court that I would with my female coaches, just simply because they're male. And I think even the way that I categorize their off days because obviously coaches, no one's perfect. Coaches have off days too. I think in my mind, even if I wouldn't verbalize it or vocalize it, I would be like, oh yeah, like I think I had more empathy. I found myself having more empathy for my female coaches, because in my mind, I'm like, well, they're a mother, and I know what it's like to be a female, and there's just so many other factors that we could go into that are frustrating, just being a female in general. And I don't know that I gave the same patience and I don't want to say respect, but empathy towards my male coaches, because I kind of always expected them to have it together all the time, because I'm like, you're a male in a male dominated space. Most
why can't you handle this?
What'd you say?
Yeah, why can't you handle this?
Yeah, right. Why can't you handle this? Like what not assuming that they're not going through anything, because I definitely empathize with mental health issues, but I guess more so like I expected them to handle it better than the females do, because they're male. That's just simply why. And I would try to distance myself from those thoughts, but I couldn't help it sometimes from just thinking like giving more patience to my female coaches than my male.
Did your teammates do the same thing? Did you find this to be a trait that went through the team, or were you unique in that because of the experiences you'd had with women role models?
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty universal on my teams, even at Cal and at Baylor. Just the way that we felt towards our female coaches and the love that was so easy to give and receive towards them, because you have, like I said, that connection of just being a female. It's just patience is given so much easier versus our male coaches. I think that was just kind of understood throughout my teams that I've been on. Now, maybe my experiences with those two teams are unique to everyone else, but I would say that's generally the case, that it's just easier to get along with, empathize, understand, and accept criticism from someone who you can see yourself as, in terms of like that female coach.
So you didn't have to do the code switching that you were talking about a little bit earlier, which was age based, but
Right.
but it could be gender based also.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
I want to go back to the woman that you were sharing that really inspired you and made you the player and the coach that you are. Tell us about her qualities, and tell us just some stories about how she taught you really everything that you know now, and just why it stuck with you in such a powerful way.
You're talking about Coach Venice. Yeah, I think a big part of the reason why I respect her so much and why I look up to her so much and why I'm so happy to be coaching with her at the club level right now, is that she is just go, go, go nonstop. I want to win. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. I care about you and I'm going to show you I care about you, but we're going to win because I want you to win. She always wanted us as players to win more than she wanted to win. She wanted it for us in ways like no other coach has. I mean, my coaches, of course, all coaches want to win. That's why we're in the sport, but she proved it in practices. She was committed. She showed up and gave 100% of herself every day. And as someone who gives a lot and I'm very outgoing and I like to make people laugh. I like being the leader in any room that I walk into, not just on the volleyball court. I like to also give 100% of myself every day. And so to see someone kind of at the same level as me, always giving, it was just honestly inspiring and exciting to be around. And then of course the teams I was on with her, I always found a lot of success because of her technique, the way she made us compete, even in the smallest, most basic, boring drills, I would say. There was always some sort of competition happening. And so she always kept us excited and hungry. And that has been something that I've wanted to take with me. I took with me in college. I always wanted to find ways to compete in the littlest of drills with my teammates, with myself. And then similarly, what I want to pass down to the players that I have in the future is just finding, again, ways to make drills that seem boring and monotonous not, because one really big overarching theme that Coach Venice implored is that the way you do anything the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so, there are no little things. If you want to go all out on that, or if you want to get a really big swing on a ball, you have to go all out on the dig, right? There's an order of operations. You can't get a really big swing until you get the dig or pass first. And so really narrowing in that when we're doing digging or passing drills that are, again, the they're not as exciting, right, as hitting lines in volleyball. It's still making sure that you're super sharp in your mind and you're super attentive, and what are you paying attention to? Where's your mental going when we're doing a drill like that? So that way, when we get to the fun part, the hitting lines and stuff, or when we're actually competing 6-on-6, that the fun part can be fun because we made sure to take care of the not fun part about volleyball. And so anyways, I can go on and on about her, but really it's just I've always been competitive, and she fostered an environment that allowed me to be most competitive most often. And that's exactly why I think people love playing sports, and that's why I love playing sports. And she just allowed me to be me and then some in every practice and every drill. And I will always thank her for that. And I'm going to try my best to emulate that with every player that I come in contact to.
So Preslie, as you think about everything that has mattered so much to you and really had you become who you are, what would you say, how do young athletes win? What would be the definition? What would be your formula for winning as an athlete?
Okay. Yeah. I love this question because I think that the best way to win is to take control of the space that you have and do your best to bring others up along with you. I think that like my best moments come from when I like look around on the court. My happiest moments in my volleyball career come from when I look around on the court and I'm not, even if I'm not totally satisfied by my performance, I'm so like enamored with being around 5 other girls that love what they're doing, are have practiced, have prepped the same just as hard as me. We feel like we're in this just chemistry that I think leads to winning. I think that it definitely takes a village and no one can get anywhere great by themselves. And the more you try and bring others with you, and you know, when you feel like going small, being bigger, like not being afraid to look outwards, look to others around you, because they are people you can lean on and they are people you want with you on the podium. I don't think that it's one person winning MVP. I think that person who got MVP got that because of the 15 other players on the team. And so that's kind of how I think about winning. It's just, it's not about you. It's about what you can do for the people around you. And if you feel good about that and what you do in practices, in meetings, even off the court, when you're by yourself, how you take care of yourself, your mental health is huge. All of those things, if you make those a priority, you'll find a trickle effect for the people around you. You know, that's the best way to lead, is by example. And so if you show others, you know, this is my way of winning, what's yours, how do I learn from you, let me take bits and pieces from you and let me give all I can to you. It's such a beautiful thing.
So what do you see in your future, Preslie?
I see myself being the head coach somewhere. I'm not sure where, and I know it's going to take a while for me to get there, but I took this ASU job because I was like, I know I love coaching, and it's been something I coached. Even my little sister is 15. I've been coaching her since she was like 6 years old for her YMCA team, right? My mom was the head coach, I was the assistant, but really I was the one coaching these girls volleyball. And I've always known that this has been a passion of mine. And so now that I'm like, do I want to coach? Do I want to enter the college realm? Is that for me? And you know, it clicked. I told Carlette this, that when I saw her one time, I think it might have been one of the first times we had a meeting this semester, but I was like, there just was a moment where I'm like, I know that this is exactly what I want to do, and it's where I'm supposed to be, is coaching collegiately.
In terms of you being at ASU, you're now getting to watch how Sonia coaches and really how she's taking care and nurturing really the whole person as a volleyball player versus just the performance and the production and maybe transactional and relationships, you know, a lot of these words. You've seen lots of college coaches, you've been around with all of your friends that have played at lots of different universities. What are you noticing as something that is unique that you wouldn't have known that as an athlete? You just kind of show up as an athlete, you do whatever it is, but you're learning from a different view at Arizona State with Sonia.
Having Sonia and Carlos being international, I think they bring a lot of different elements that I wouldn't necessarily think of, not like wildly out there techniques, you know, like there's still a system that I understand, but there are things that they see and that they notice that I would have not noticed otherwise. And I think that does come from them having that, not only being international, but playing international, them having that pro experience. None of my coaches in the past have played pro. And so I don't know if I would, I'm not sure if I would attribute it to that, but I want to, because I do think that when you play against literally the best in the world and you have that experience of like not only just the best in college and D1 in America, but like literally Olympic level good, there are so many other things that you take note of, that you notice as a player, that I think she's really that she's now as a coach having her players notice, that is like very different from what I've learned from my coaches before. And so I think that piece of Sonia not only being international but playing internationally is like super cool to see. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's just like one of the differences, I guess.
It takes us back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier. And as we're trying to nurture and grow the number of coaches, if international experience, there's very, very few people, men or women, who are going to be elite domestically enough that they can then be elite internationally.
Totally.
And if that's where, I mean, I'm glad Sonia's doing it, and I'm glad you're excited about doing it. What frightens me a little bit is then our pool of women that we're going to be pulling from is very small.
Yes.
Because the kid that's in the varicose vein lane on the end of the bench, who's really studying the sport and learning and loving it, doesn't have much of a chance.
Yeah.
At least on the women's side, and there are a lot of there are a lot of Division I coaches, Division I coaches, who never even played on a varsity team in college.
Yeah.
And that's not a cheap shot. I mean, they didn't have the opportunity. I mean, they would have if they could have. But if we're pulling our women from the Sonia level and we're pulling our men from a much broader player pool, that's going to make it hard.
Yeah. No, I have thought about this actually, and I think your question that you asked me earlier, just about like, being an elite player then being a coach, I think that it's almost like now, if you're not an elite player, it brings up the question, are you a qualified coach?
Right. Right. Oh, we just don't have any qualified women and stuff. And it's, because the elite players, because I'm guessing you have lots of teammates who have found out that you're coaching and who are going, are you crazy?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Don't you want to have a normal life and a normal career and everything else? And you go, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that, the number of athletes, both men and women, who go into coaching is fairly small.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what thoughts do you have about that?
Yeah, I think one thing that I think is related and will really help this is the AU Pro League that's happening here in the US. Inviting college players to play at home is going to allow them to also have opportunities to coach at home. Whereas I feel like the draw to play pro overseas has really, I've seen and heard that it causes a burnout for the sport when you're done. When you're done playing overseas, it's like you're done. And there's very few people who are like, all right, I'm done playing overseas. Now I'm going to go coach. Right. It's kind of like, it feels like it's like you either do one or the other. Like you go into coaching or you go play pro. And I think that hopefully my hope is that the AU Pro League out of Dallas, as it continues to establish itself and expand, is that it will just invite more people to invest in the sport right now where it is in the United States, as opposed to going elsewhere. And I really do think that there will be an increase in women wanting to coach, knowing that they have the opportunity to play nearby and can coach not at the same time, but somewhat within the same time span.
So Preslie, thank you so much for the gift of today's conversation. And Kathy, as always, love us exploring really how women win our way. So Preslie, for, as we close and we send you off to go be this great coach, what is your winning strategies for how you win your way?
My winning strategy would be to never be afraid to speak up and empower those around you. I found that my voice, even though it's loud, it goes, what I say, it goes a long way. And you can have such a big impact with your words. And so me being a young coach, I'm not going to be afraid to make significant impacts with my words. I'm not going to be afraid to challenge myself and the people around me to be better, because I think there's always, whether you've been coaching for 20 years or 2 months like me, there's always ways you can get better. And that starts by asking why and speaking up when you feel like it's necessary. And so I have a voice and I want to be able to use it in all the right ways. And I want younger girls, people like my little sister, to look up to me and say, that's who I want to be like one day. And so I'm thankful to have had so many female coaches for me to look up to. And I'm just super excited to be one of those people one day.
Well, we are very excited for the volleyball world to have you. And so team, it's up to you. Go out and be bold, be intentional with your words, and make a positive impact. Thank you very much, Preslie and Kathy. Appreciate you both.
Thanks so much.